I've always been a book juggler. By that, I mean that I always read at least 3 books and sometimes 4 at a time. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. Hi, I'm Library Lynn. I make knowing great nonfiction books my mission. Don't know what to read next? I always have ideas. I've been watching BookTube videos for a while now, and some of the ones I enjoy the most are the ones about what I'm reading now. It's sort of like having a conversation with people. I like doing book reviews, but since I like watching other people do these kinds of videos, I thought I'd give it a shot myself. This is how I read pretty much every day. I am very much a creature of habit. When I first get up in the morning, usually by 6:30, while I'm drinking my coffee, I read something spiritual or inspirational in nature. It varies. After I finish my work for the day, usually around 4 p.m., I'll read whatever nonfiction selection that I'm currently working on the most, and I'll stick with that book until about 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the evening, depending. I try to work my reading in around cooking dinner and going for walks with my husband and my dog if they want to, and anything else that I need to do. After that, I'll watch YouTube videos for a while because I really enjoy doing that too, and I need a little bit of break. My eyes sometimes get tired. I go to bed at 9 o'clock. And then I spend around 30 minutes, lights out at 9:30, reading something fun, something that's relaxing, something I don't have to think about too much. So that's when I read sometimes children's novels, sometimes self-help books, sometimes adult novels, sometimes poetry. It just depends on what I'm in the mood for. And then on Sundays, I have a project book that I read when I have the time and the energy to work on it. Okay, with those 4 categories in mind, here's what I'm reading right now. Right now, I'm in the middle of a massive spiritual odyssey that began around 12 years ago, and I set this for myself. It began when I discovered the books of A.H. Almas. I'm not sure exactly how many books he's written now, but it's probably somewhere between 16 and 25. I haven't read them all. Almas is the pen name for Hamid Ali. He's a Berkeley-educated psychoanalyst, and he was a student of Claudio Naranjo, who is most famous probably for his work on the Enneagram. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on what Almas talks about here because it's really complicated. You could talk about it for years and not really exhaust everything he says. But let's just say he combines his extensive knowledge of psychology with the mystical literature of almost all the world's great religions. And then he also combines that with the Enneagram to come up with a method for students and therapists who work with people to make breakthroughs in understanding reality as it really is. It's mind-blowing and profound, and I found it to be very helpful. And please understand that I'm not recommending anyone else do this. I'm just sharing what I do. If you've got some sort of program that works for you and makes you happy, that's great. Stick with it. But this is what works for me. So right now, I'm reading his book, Inexhaustible Mystery, in the mornings. This is the 2nd or 3rd time that I've read this book, and I get more out of it every time I read it. I'm almost done with it this time for now, and when I finish, I'm going to read another book that I've also read about 2 or 3 times called Facets of Unity, the Enneagram of Holy Ideas. It's just a mind-blowing book. After I finish up my work for the day, as I usually said, around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but it varies, I read a nonfiction book that I've picked from my to-be-read pile. I never run out of things to choose from because I'm a hopeless book buying addict, and I keep around 50 to 60 books piled up in a spare room to read. Right now, I'm reading The Stories of English by David Crystal, who is, or was, not sure he still is now, a linguistics professor in the UK. This book was published in 2004 by Overlook Press. In it, he acknowledges that the story of standard English, the English we write when we want to impress other people, has been told very well in other places, and it certainly has. There was a PBS special years ago, I think it was Robert Crumb, maybe, who did that book series, and it's not a series, it's actually one book, but the TV show was a series. But in this book, Crystal wants to trace the development of conversational English and its dialects from Old English onwards. And my mind is completely boggled at the idea. Even for an internationally respected linguist, this seemed pretty audacious to me, but he does it very well. I'm finishing up with Middle English right now. I don't get some of the nuances he discusses, especially involving pronunciations. I have a hard time with those. But I love his stories and how certain events and unchanging human characteristics like snobbery affect language development. Written language, for example, is very different from spoken language unless a person's in a formal setting and is trying really hard to adhere to the rules. People who speak dialects, and you've no doubt picked up on my accent, tend to be considered uneducated, even though Crystal takes great pains to point out that this is far from true. I'm finding the book to be a fun romp through history through its impacts on language. If you're interested in language at all, I'd recommend this book. He's gotten to the earliest printing presses right now and the ways they affected English. I'm really looking forward to getting to modern English, and especially English in the Elizabethan age. I've always found that fascinating, and I've never read about it from a language perspective. Now on to my bedtime reading. I'm not really particular about what I read at night, as I said. I just like to have something that will kind of calm me down, occupy my mind, help me unwind, that's exciting enough to keep me reading until I go to bed, but is not so exciting that it will keep me up. So right now I'm reading This Rough Magic by Mary Stewart. My husband buys his reading material at thrift shops for the most part, or he goes to libraries, and I say, good for him. That's great. I came across this book while I was out with him a couple of months ago. I liked the title. I recognized the author's name, and it cost $1, so I thought, why not? Years ago, a friend strongly encouraged me to read the Merlin series by Mary Stewart. I never did, and I'm not sure why I didn't. This is the first book I've ever read by her, and she was quite popular in the mid to late 20th century, and she mostly wrote romantic mysteries. I'm only 4 chapters in, and even though I knew absolutely nothing about her or the book, I already had it pegged as a romantic mystery. Because of the Merlin books, I had expected this to be a fantasy or maybe a magical realism kind of book. I didn't have the dust jacket to go by. The lead character, Lucy Waring, is a 25-year-old aspiring British actress who lives in London, and when her first play closes after a dismal 2-month run, she goes to visit her sister, who's staying at her husband's family property on Corfu. After being shot at on the beach while she was frolicking in the Mediterranean Sea with a dolphin, it seems that a mystery is afoot. In accusing a nearby young man of being the shooter, she's unconvinced she has the wrong guy, even though he protests strongly that he's not the one. But she has not gotten away from him before he has seen her in her wet swim clothes. If they don't get together before this book is over, I'll be shocked. But sometimes I'm wrong. Maybe he was lying. I'm going to reserve judgment on this book because I'm only 4 chapters in. But so far, it's been good bedtime reading. It's interesting and well written enough to keep me awake for 30 minutes, but not so exciting it interferes with sleep after the lights are out. I may do an update on this later, and I may not. Let me know if you're interested. So this takes us to my occasional Sunday project. Right now, that is Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards. I mentioned this one in an earlier video. My only goal was to finish this book by the end of 2023. I'm almost halfway through now, and it's May. I've seen people recommend that you read this whole book in about 5 days or less, but I just don't have the time. But I'm enjoying the process. Maybe when I retire, I can go through it again in less than a week and see if that makes a difference. Edwards says that when we're drawing, we need to operate from our right brain. This is very different from the way most of us normally handle our daily activities. The left brain tries to be helpful by running the show, by telling the hand what to do, and sort of determining what we see. But if we rely on the left brain, we go back to drawing exactly the same way we did as a child. Usually as children, she says we stop developing as drawers, as people who, our drawing abilities get cut off somewhere around age 10 to 12. And usually these left brain drawings are not pretty. She's hoping to provide a new way of seeing and relating to the world. And that's pretty audacious, and I think it sounds really interesting. I believe I'm getting her lessons as I go along, but honestly, I'm really too busy with other things right now to spend a lot of time practicing. So that's it for me for today. And I'd like to know, how many books do you read at a time? And what are you reading right now? For more nonfiction book recommendations, hit like and subscribe so you'll always have fresh ideas. And for even more books, check out my book, Library Lynn's curated collection of superlative nonfiction. It has a portable library of expert recommended and award-winning books on every topic. The book was a finalist for the Eric Hoffer Book Award, and I'm very proud of that. So until next time, happy reading.